She never imagined her life would end up this way, huddled in a cold alley in Baltimore, eating crumbs from a trash bin, ignored by every passerby like she didn't exist. Once, Adaobi had dreams, big ones. She dreamt of owning her own beauty brand, of love that didn't come with pain, and a family who didn't abandon you when the road got dark. But life tore those dreams apart, piece by piece, until all that was left was silence and shame. She was invisible, until a black Range Rover stopped, until a man she hadn't seen in years dressed like royalty now stepped out and whispered her name. Adaobi. She lifted her head slowly, and in that moment, 1,000 buried memories came rushing back of Lagos, of betrayal, of a wedding that had once been hers. And exactly 1 week later, the same Adaobi would walk into the most luxurious wedding in Lagos, dressed like a queen, heads turned, mouths dropped. But no one knew the secret she carried. No one expected the storm she was about to unleash. Because this wasn't just a love story. This was payback delivered in silence, in heels, and with a smile. It was just past 8 p.m. when Tunde Alabi stepped out onto the balcony of his high-rise Baltimore penthouse. The sky was an ink-black canvas, scattered with stars that twinkled like scattered dreams. Far below, the city buzzed car horns, distant laughter, a faint siren in the distance. But the sounds barely registered. His eyes were locked on the single envelope in his hand. Thick, expensive, white with gold trim. His name was written in elegant cursive lettering, hand-delivered through his assistant. It wasn't a random event invitation. It was personal, deliberate. He had ignored it for an hour. It sat there on the marble countertop, like a sleeping snake. Now, he held it again, thumb rubbing along the seal, heart growing heavier with each breath. A part of him already knew. He turned it over once more, then tore it open in one smooth motion. The paper inside was silky and crisp, the kind you paid a printer extra just to touch. You are cordially invited to the wedding ceremony of Miss Seyi Adebayo and Mr. Kunle Adeyemi. His breath caught. He didn't need to read the rest. 2 names. Just 2 names. And suddenly, the weight of the past crashed into the present like a wave hitting glass. Seyi. Kunle. His hand trembled slightly as he lowered the invitation. The cool Baltimore air that once offered comfort now bit into his skin. He let the card slip from his fingers onto the outdoor table, face down like it burned. It had been over a year since he and Seyi broke their engagement. 1 year since he boarded a plane and left Nigeria behind. He had told himself he was over her, but the truth was messier than that. He didn't miss Seyi. Not the real one. Not the woman who stood by while Kunle, his business partner and best friend, gutted their company from the inside and smiled through the smoke. But the betrayal? The betrayal never stopped bleeding. They were the 2 people he trusted most. His inner circle. His family. Kunle and he had started from nothing 2 boys in rumpled shirts, pitching real estate dreams to Lagos landlords who laughed them out of their offices. They were ambitious, reckless, hungry. They worked late nights, signed risky deals, hustled until their brand was on every major property listing in Lekki and Ikoyi. By their 3rd year, they were giving interviews to Business Day. They shook hands with politicians, they were rising, and then it all fell apart. Tunde learned the truth too late. While he was building a vision, Kunle had been building a trap. Fake LLCs, ghost companies, rerouted contracts, money laundering, everything hidden beneath polished suits and charming grins. Kunle stole millions behind his back. And when Tunde started suspecting something, he went to the one person he thought he could trust, Seyi. She already knew. She had known all along. And when he confronted them, they didn't deny it. They didn't even flinch. Business is business, Tunde, Kunle had said. smiling like they were still boys sharing a cold drink after a tough day. And Sei, she had just folded her arms and said coldly, "You're too emotional. That's why you'll never be as big as him." That night, Tunde packed everything he owned into one suitcase and vanished. He left behind his company, his reputation, his pride. He landed in Baltimore with a broken heart and an idea scribbled in a notebook, a logistics app that could track and automate cargo delivery across West African ports. He slept on a couch, ate cheap ramen, worked for 20 hours a day, and when investors laughed, he coded harder. 2 years later, his company, Move Africa, was valued at over $40 million. He had offices in Baltimore, Lagos, and Accra. TechCrunch called him a silent disruptor, and Forbes Africa named him in their under 30 even though he was already 32. But none of that success dulled the sting. And tonight, as he stood there with the ghost of his past written in gold ink, it felt like all of it, every win, every dollar, every headline, had been leading to this moment. A wedding, their wedding, a twisted celebration built on betrayal. He laughed suddenly, short, cold, bitter. "They think I'm just going to ignore this," he muttered, gripping the balcony railing. He looked down at the city, the same city that had watched him rise from ashy sand, felt something shift in his chest. Not grief, not jealousy. Purpose. He didn't just want to show up. He wanted to return to Lagos with the elegance of a king and the fire of a man reborn. And he wouldn't go alone. He would bring someone with him. Someone the world ignored. Someone who, like him, had been left behind and forgotten. Someone who had every reason to burn it all down. She was curled in the dark alley behind McCullough Street in Baltimore, hugging her knees under layers of torn jackets. She hadn't eaten properly in days. People walked by and pretended not to see her like she was part of the garbage. But then, that black Range Rover slowed down, the windows rolled down, her heart pounded. She didn't recognize him at first as beard was trimmed, his frame filled out in muscle and confidence. But his eyes, those eyes hadn't changed. He stepped out and knelt in front of her. "Adaobi?" She blinked, dazed. "Tund?" 5 years earlier, Adaobi Nwachukwu stood barefoot on the hot pavement outside Murtala Muhammad International Airport, blinking against the harsh Lagos sun as she waved goodbye to her weeping mother. With 2 small suitcases and a heart bursting with hope, she boarded the plane to America convinced her life was about to change forever. She had been promised a job in Maryland by a Nigerian family, respectable people, they claimed. She would clean, cook, and help with the children while saving money to go to beauty school. Her cousin had arranged it. "It's your breakthrough," they had said. And at first, it felt like a blessing. The house in Maryland was big too big. Her room wasn't a room, it was a basement corner with a foam mattress and no windows. She started work the very next morning. Every day, she woke at 5 a.m., washed the family's clothes by hand, cleaned the 4 bathrooms, prepared breakfast for 6, watched over 2 wild children all day, cooked dinner, washed dishes, swept, mopped, ironed. Then, if she was lucky, she got a cold plate of rice and permission to sleep. Her Madame Auntie Clara was a sharp-tongued woman with a face that never smiled. The husband barely acknowledged her. The children screamed constantly, and her passport taken for safekeeping. At night, Adaobi would lie awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, whispering affirmations to herself. "I will not break. I will open my shop one day. I will be somebody." But hope is a fragile thing. After 6 months, she asked to be paid. Just something small, enough to buy pads and a calling card. Auntie Clara's smile was ice. "Paid? For what? You eat here. You sleep here. You're lucky we brought you to America." From that moment, her life got worse. She was insulted, slapped, and told she was ungrateful. Her food was cut down to leftovers. She wasn't allowed outside without a child strapped to her hip. Still, she endured. For 3 years. She kept a hidden journal filled with skincare recipes, business plans, logo sketches. She wrote the name of her future brand across every page. Glow Nija, your skin, your pride. She dreamed of a kiosk, then a shop, then a global beauty line. Even in chains, her mind stayed free. Until the day it all shattered. It started like all betrayals do quietly. Subtle things, odd things, things you brush off at first because your heart refuses to believe what your eyes are beginning to see. Tunde remembered the first time something felt off. It was a Tuesday. The office was buzzing with excitement over a new high-rise deal in Lekki. Investors were flying in from South Africa. Kunle had been on a phone call, speaking in hushed tones in the corner of the boardroom. Tunde had walked in and heard the tail end. Yes, make it the same company as before Sunrise Holdings. He hadn't thought much of it then, just another partner, another holding firm. But the name stuck. 2 weeks later, he saw it again, buried deep in the files for the Lekki project. Sunrise Holdings, Mauritius, registered in a jurisdiction Tunde didn't recognize. He brought it up casually during a late-night strategy session. Subject: Wire instructions, Port Harcourt Residential. Funds will be routed to the secondary account as agreed. Keep this off the books. I've already handled T. He's busy with the Abuja pitch. Say he has the updated brief. She'll get him to sign if needed. Tunde froze. He clicked further. Documents, voice notes, signatures, fake board meetings, altered contracts. Suddenly, he couldn't breathe. It wasn't just one deal. It was every deal in the past 6 months. Kunle had created shell companies in Ghana, Mauritius, and even Dubai. He had been rerouting payments through backdoor bank accounts. Several properties were registered under fake entities that all led back to one name. His name, and Seyi, the woman Tunde had been planning a wedding with, her fingerprints were on all of it. Emails, signatures, calendar invites for private meetings Kunle never mentioned. Tunde stumbled back from the computer like it had electrocuted him. It was 8:32 a.m. The boardroom in their Lekki Phase 1 office was cold that morning, literally and figuratively. The air conditioner hummed above, but it did nothing to cool the rising heat in Tunde's chest. He sat alone at the massive mahogany table, eyes fixed on the laptop screen before him. The files were open, the recordings ready. The printed evidence spread out in perfect order beside a hot cup of black coffee he hadn't touched. The betrayal lay before him, clear, undeniable. He didn't sleep the night before. He didn't eat. He just reviewed the same documents again and again, hoping somehow the names and numbers would change. But they never did. He loved Seyi. He trusted Kunle. And now he sat in the same room where dreams were once built, waiting to bury them. The door opened. Kunle strolled in first, whistling and typing into his phone, dressed like a man who'd conquered the world. "You called for a meeting this early?" he muttered, dropping into a chair. "Bro, couldn't it wait?" Behind him, Seyi entered, flawless, poised, lips painted wine red, wearing a silk blouse and no guilt. Tunde didn't answer. He just stared at them. Kunle looked up, frowning slightly. "You good?" Tunde slid a thick folder across the table. "Read it." Kunle blinked, picked it up. "What's this?" He stopped. The first page was a printout of a wire transfer from Sunrise Holdings to a Dubai account. The account name? Kunle Adaobi. Page 2, an email between Kunle and a property developer, instructing him to reroute payment into a shell company. Page 3, a WhatsApp transcript between Kunle and Seyi. He doesn't suspect a thing. Just keep him busy with Abuja. I'll handle the Lecky and 6 files. Page 4, a voice note transcription. Tunde clicked play. Kunle's voice echoed through the room. Tunde's smart, but he's soft. He won't find out. And if he does, who'll believe him? This is Lagos. We eat or we get eaten. Silence followed. Kunle dropped the file slowly. Sei's face went blank. Tunde sat back. He didn't yell. He didn't shake. His voice was quiet, icy, precise. You stole from me, both of you. You took everything we built, gutted it from the inside, and laughed behind my back. Kunle scoffed. Tunde, this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. He turned to Sei. I thought you were going to be my wife. You held my hand while helping him sign deals behind my back. Her lips trembled, but she kept her voice steady. Tunde, listen. Don't lie, he said, voice rising ever so slightly. His heart thudded in his chest. You helped him rewrite contracts. You saw the alerts. You approved the documents. You were supposed to protect me, not sell me out like a land deal. Sei looked away. Kunle leaned forward now, trying to take control. Look, man, you were too emotional. That's your problem. Always taking things personal. I just made a move. You should have seen it coming. Tunde's breath hitched. So now it's my fault? I didn't say that. You just did. Tunde stood. His chair scraped across the tiled floor like a blade. He walked to the window and stared out at the skyline. That skyline they once chased together. I loved you both. I gave you loyalty. I built something with you. And this is how you repay me? Neither of them answered. Tunde turned around. His face was hard now. Different. The man they betrayed was gone. I want nothing from you, he said. Keep the buildings, keep the clients, keep the illusion. But I promise you this. He pointed a finger across the table. The day will come when everyone sees you for what you really are. And when it happens, I won't lift a finger to stop it. Kunle stood too. His voice dropped. What, you're threatening me now? No, Tunde said. I'm making a promise. He turned to Sei. Thank you for showing me your real face before I married a mask. Her lip quivered. He walked past them, stopped at the door, then looked back. Delete my name from everything, today. Kunle laughed. What are you going to do? Start from scratch? Tunde smiled faintly. I'd rather start from scratch with integrity than sit on a throne of rot. And then he left. The last time Tunde stepped into his Lekki office, it didn't feel like his anymore. It was barely 6 a.m., and the sun had only begun to peek through the skyline. Lagos was still stretching awake, its traffic not yet monstrous, its chaos not yet full volume. The roads were calm, but inside him a storm raged. The building's security guard, a quiet older man named Musa, greeted him with a confused nod. Oga, you come early today. Tunde just smiled faintly and nodded back. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Musa didn't know this would be the last time he'd ever see him in this building. Tunde took the elevator up in silence. Each floor that passed felt like a countdown. When the doors opened, he stepped into the place he once called a dream. The office was quiet, too quiet. The framed awards on the walls still bore his name, Tunde Alabi, co-founder, Visionaire of the Year. The success stories in the magazines still had his face. The company logo, bold and proud, still sat across the reception wall. But it was all a lie now. Because beneath every plaque, behind every Millionaire deal, was the betrayal of a man he once called brother and the silence of a woman he once called wife-to-be. He walked slowly through the halls, past the boardroom where he'd once laid out their 5-year expansion plan, past the creative room where he'd spent nights eating suya with the team, past the desk where Sei once waited after hours, smiling like a secret she never planned to tell. and finally he reached his office. He paused at the door. He had left it untouched since the confrontation. It still smelled of cedar wood and expensive leather. A framed photo sat on his desk, the one Kunle had given him on their second company anniversary. They were laughing in it, champagne in hand. Tunde stared at the picture for a moment. Then, without hesitation, he took it from the frame and tore it straight down the middle. He dropped it in the trash. Next, he pulled open a drawer, took out his old laptop, the one he had coded their first business pitch on, and slid it into his backpack. No fanfare, no grand exit, no farewell email, just one final act. He pulled out a sheet of paper and wrote by hand. I built this from nothing. You turned it into everything I never wanted. My name leaves with me. He folded the note and placed it on the desk. Then he took off his access badge, his custom lapel pin, and his nameplate, the one that read, Tunde Adaobi, co-founder, per millionaire, naging partner. He left them neatly in a row and walked out. The city outside was already waking up. Vendors were setting up tables. Keke Napeps zipped past. Street sweepers moved in unison, clearing debris from yesterday. Lagos was stretching, alive, unaware that inside a certain Lekki office building, a life was being buried. Tunde reached the main doors of the office glass, tall, the same ones he used to walk through with pride every morning, greeted by interns and nodding staff. But this morning, there was no one to greet him, no one to notice. He stood still, one hand on the glass, the other hanging loosely by his side. His backpack light now, with only his laptop and some printed resignation papers, sat quietly over one shoulder. The air in the lobby felt stale. Or maybe it was just that the dreams he once breathed into these walls had finally dried up. He turned around slowly, took in the space, the curved marble reception desk, the wall of framed accomplishments, the painting Kunle once bragged about buying for Brame 7 million. And then behind the desk his name, still engraved in frosted glass, Tunde Adaobi, co-founder, vision director. He walked over to it, ran his fingers along the letters. They were cool to the touch, elegant, clean. A part of him whispered, take a picture. But the other part, the part that had seen betrayal up close, said, leave it. He reached up and, with one firm pull, slid the nameplate out of his holder, set it gently on the receptionist's desk, then took a long step back. The hall buzzed with nervous energy, but to Adaobi, everything felt muted, like someone had turned down the volume on the entire world. She was almost at the door now, one step from exiting the wedding hall forever. Her emerald dress swept behind her like liquid power. Her heels tapped softly on the marble floor. Her chin remained high, her shoulders still, but something made her stop. A presence, a chill, a weight behind her. She turned slowly. Across the room, just past the broken petals, spilled champagne, and half-eaten jollof on designer plates, Seyi sat alone. The throne meant for a bride now looked like a prison. Her veil had been removed, her makeup smudged. The perfection she worked so hard to maintain was now melting under the heat of humiliation. Around her, the bridal party lingered awkwardly, but no one dared speak. Adaobi didn't blink. Neither did Seyi. In that single glance, everything unspoken filled the space between them. No words, just a reckoning. Seyi's eyes held 1,000 questions. How did you survive? How did you get here? Why now? What do you want from me? Adaobi's eyes answered all of them without moving her lips. I survived because I was never as weak as you thought. I got here because you tried to bury me and forgot I was a seed. Now I want nothing. Nothing but my silence to haunt you. Seyi's lips trembled, like she might speak, might say sorry, or scream, or plead. But Adaobi didn't give her the chance. She did something worse than shouting. She nodded. Once, Slow, graceful, final. A queen acknowledging a dethroned imposter. And in that nod lived every insult Adaobi ever swallowed, every scar she covered, every night she spent in the cold, forgotten. The look said, "You didn't break me, you built me." Then Adaobi turned away and never looked back. The lobby doors closed behind him with a soft click. He didn't look back again. Not once. His phone buzzed. A new message. Move Africa has been shortlisted for the Pan-Africa Logistics Grant. Interview set for next Thursday. Tunde smiled to himself. No drama, no applause, just forward motion. The car doors closed with a soft thump, not loud but final, like the closing of a chapter they'd spent years trying to survive. Outside, chaos still buzzed faintly behind them, murmurs, shifting chairs, hushed arguments, camera flashes fading into the background. The once lavish wedding now lay in emotional ruins. But inside the black Range Rover, it was silent, peaceful, still. Adaobi leaned back against the cool leather seat, her chest rising and falling slowly. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to breathe, really breathe, not in fear, not in hope, but in calm confidence. Across from her, Tunde sat in the same relaxed posture, one arm resting on the edge of the seat, his eyes staring straight ahead as the driver pulled onto the road and eased into Lagos traffic. No one said anything for several seconds. The car felt like its own universe, a safe bubble moving through a city that had once chewed them up and spit them out. Adaobi turned her head and looked out the window. The streets were alive with the usual Lagos energy hawkers weaving between traffic, Okadas darting past, mothers carrying sleeping babies wrapped in colorful wrappers, men shouting over football scores on transistor radios. But something about it felt different. She was no longer beneath it all. She was above it now, not with arrogance, but with awareness. She folded her arms over her chest and smiled slightly. Tunde noticed. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "More than okay." A pause. Then she added, "You?" He looked at her, his eyes tired but clear. "I feel clean." That word hung in the air. Clean, free of the rot, free of the weight, free of the lies they once swallowed just to keep surviving. Adaobi looked at him fully now, face to face. "You know what we just did, right?" she asked. He nodded. "We didn't destroy them." She tilted her head. "We didn't?" Tunde smiled faintly. "No, they destroyed themselves. We just turned on the lights." Adaobi chuckled, the kind of laugh that's half relief, half wonder. "And now?" she whispered. "What happens next?" Tunde didn't answer immediately. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, a rough sketch of the next expansion model for Move Africa. He handed it to her. She unfolded it, studied it for a moment, then smiled. He reached into the small briefcase beside him and pulled out another envelope, this one labeled Glow Niger, Product Line Launch Plan. Adaobi's heart flipped for a moment as she took it in. She looked back at him. His voice was soft, steady. "Next, we build. For real this time. With no snakes, no lies, no apologies." She nodded, then leaned her head against the backrest and whispered, "I think they'll hate how quiet our success will be." Tunde chuckled. "That's the plan." As the Range Rover rolled down the road and blended into the rhythm of Lagos night traffic, the city never paused for them. But that was fine. They didn't need noise. They didn't need validation. They just needed the road ahead wide open, clean, and fully theirs. The apartment in Baltimore was nothing like what he left behind in Lekki. No leather chairs, no glass conference tables. No assistant bringing him fresh pineapple juice at 11 a.m. It was small, quiet, unfurnished, except for a single couch, a thrift store desk, a half-broken standing lamp, and a rented mattress still in its plastic wrap. But it was his silence, his space, his reset. Tunde dropped his backpack by the door and stood in the middle of the room. He didn't sigh. He didn't collapse. He just stood still taking, in the simplicity. No titles, no expectations, no betrayal. Just wood floors, white walls, and the hum of possibility. The only piece of his past he'd brought was a battered black laptop, old, slow, but full of code. His code. His dream. Something he had started sketching in notebooks before Kunle ever touched his first contract. Tunde walked to the desk, plugged it in, and opened the screen. It flickered to life dim, scratched, familiar. He double-clicked a folder named Move Africa, Prototype V1.0. Inside were mock-ups, early wireframes, logistics algorithms, email drafts, and one line of code he had written 2 years ago during a lonely night in Abuja. Track what they think can't be tracked. Deliver what they doubt you can. He read it again, then opened a blank file. He began typing. The hours passed unnoticed. He didn't check Instagram, didn't check in with Nigeria, didn't call his lawyer. He just coded, fingers dancing across the keys, the light from the screen flickering against his face like a forge reawakening. No distractions, just determination. He wasn't building an app. He was building a weapon of precision, a solution to inefficiency, a system for African ports to finally function like global leaders. Because while Kunle and Seyi were planning the color of napkins for their wedding, Tunde was building a legacy. A system to track goods in real time, automate customs clearance, predict traffic around seaports, and provide digital footprints for every container. No middlemen, no shady deals. Just clean, efficient innovation. At 2:43 a.m., he hit save, stared at the blinking cursor, and smiled. He had no investors, no office, no PR team. He had $6,000 in savings, a $2,300 rent, and a fridge with 2 bottles of water and leftover jollof from the Nigerian restaurant down the block. But he also had a blueprint, a name no one could erase, and something his enemies lacked clarity. He didn't want to compete with them anymore. He wanted to make them irrelevant. The sun began to rise. The Baltimore skyline lit up slowly, washing the apartment in warm orange and soft gold. Tunde stood, stretched his back, and walked to the window. For a long time, he just stared out. No music, no claps, no dramatic I made it moment. Just one man standing quietly on the edge of a new beginning. And in that silence, he whispered to himself, "This time, no one touches it but me." He didn't look back as he walked out of the boardroom. He didn't take the elevator. He took the stair saw 6 flights each step like a heartbeat pounding out of his chest. By midnight, he had cleared his office. By morning, his resignation letter was on the table. By that weekend, he was on a flight to the US. He left with one suitcase, a cracked laptop, and a fire in his chest that would not go out. And now they were getting married. Now they were inviting him back to smile, to clap, to pretend. But he wasn't the same man. They had buried the old Tunde. The man walking into that wedding, he had come to bury them. That night was colder than most. The wind pierced through her layers. Her stomach ached with emptiness. She curled into herself in the alley behind the liquor store, shivering when the sound of tires crunching on gravel made her lift her head slightly. A sleek black Range Rover had stopped near the alley's entrance. She squinted. Probably another rich man here to drop trash or ignore her. But then the door opened. Polished shoes stepped out. A tall figure emerged, sharp in a tailored coat, his posture confident, his aura different. She looked up and froze. He walked closer, slowly. Then he knelt. "Adaobi?" he asked. She blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. That voice. She remembered that voice. "Tunde," she whispered. His eyes widened in recognition. Her face had changed, sunken, dirt-streaked, tired, but her eyes, those caramel brown eyes, hadn't changed. "Oh my God," he breathed. "What happened to you?" She couldn't speak, couldn't even cry. Tunde took off his coat and wrapped it around her. He didn't flinch, didn't back away. "I'm taking you with me," he said. And just like that, for the first time in years, someone saw her. Tunde didn't just rescue her. He gave her back her reflection. In his Baltimore penthouse, she had her first hot bath in years. He hired a doctor, a therapist, and a personal stylist. He asked no intrusive questions, only offered resources, space, and respect. Adaobi stood in front of a mirror one morning, touching her clean face. Her curls were soft again. Her body was still healing, but her fire was back. Then came the conversation that changed everything. "I'm going back to Nigeria," Tunde said one evening, sipping wine by the fireplace, "to a wedding." He handed her the same invitation that had once burned in his hand. "Kunle, Seyi." She clenched it, reading the names. "I want you to come with me," he said, "not just as company, as proof of survival, of rebirth." She turned to him. "And revenge?" He smiled. "Only if you want it." Adaobi didn't speak for a moment. Then she said softly, "Let's burn them down, elegantly."